Super short Ghibellini provoked thought. So this is related to the first chapter of the Leo Strauss and I always say the second part wrong, the restoration of, quote, natural philosophy. It said resurrection and um, I can't remember the other way I got it wrong, but restoration. Okay. If after Leo Strauss's critique of um, the concept of the political, um, what's left is a sort of a grund concept or a basic concept. Um, can this be set what prevents us from setting this alongside Strauss's talk of nature, except that apparently um, Fusus has a Athenian word apparently brought into the consciousness of these um, early um, discussions of the 200 years, over 200 years before um, the death of Socrates. You have these discussions in Athens, and especially in the context of Pisistratus and the Pisistrati, or his larger family. So you could kind of picture Trump and Trump's extended family, and then instead of the Secret Service, you had some kind of foreign bodyguard similar to the situation at Rome later, the Praetorians, who were famous and who Plato has echoed an idealized version of, not idealized is the wrong word, but it was echoed to attempt to show what could be done with this institution that would make it better as the people surrounding the philosopher king, as though the people surrounding the Dalai Lama. Because, the Dalai Lama himself, of course, had an army around him, military army, who in fact engaged and actively attacked China before they were at length over the course of many centuries wiped out. That makes it sound like I'm taking the side of the Chinese, but in part it's just because I'm reacting to the narrative that's more dominant in a way. So is this concept that rose in this so-called Athenian miracle, Fusus, which is apparently we're trying to get into contact with, of the same standing as the political. So now let's think about what made me think about this is the way Ghibellini is raising the issue of the political. So in the sense that it's not political as against economic. Of course, he's just making me more conscious of what Schmidt has already said. But it's not political against the economic or against the aesthetic or against some other domain, but it's as though a rival concept to nature. So there was a dispute early on already between Plato and Aristotle over whether the polis, from which you could say sort of like political is just an adjective, or it just sort of describes what's happening in a polis. And so in the whether there's this question of a tribal group or a village, ethnos. The term Dugin is so absorbed in. I think Dugin claims basically until very recently, like 99% of Russians were peasants and therefore ethnos. Not sure how that works if they're in such large groups, but it's this question of whether there's an essential difference between life of the ethnos or the tribal life and political life or the city life, where city means country, because there's this idea of equality of the citizens is already there for again a couple hundred years before Plato. Yeah, so just this question, I just wanted to raise that question quickly of whether the political and the natural can be put forward as not just in this sense that we understand it today, as though the political, this is part of what I want to say is like when you get sort of people like Judith Butler who want to say all the time, well, we made this, so, oh, this stupid Vico argument, which is, I mean, it's so manifestly false. So we say we made this, so therefore we can change it. But obviously, we didn't. Obviously, some things were born, and actually, probably the greater part of the total ingredients in the stew were things that we didn't make. What we made is the recipe. Something more like that is in the direction of reality, I think. So this kind of claim that we made the political world and the institutional structures, or that, you know, this Now School thing that apparently has taken over everywhere. Yeah, I think that's just not the case. So then the concept of the political makes more sense once we see that it's something else is happening here, and it's more like the concept of nature, although it's not the concept of nature, and it's this fusion, confusion, storm of concomitant evidences and so on, where some contest should happen here between concept of nature as growth and the concept of the political as the guidance. I think that brings us more in contact with Prussia anyway, which I think is important, but that's enough for this one.